Boom, I'm in the room. Good day, everybody. Welcome to Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. Now, I've got a wonderful guest on today. Now, shall I bring her in? And we'll get her to tell her story. So, without too much further ado, Susan, welcome.
Hey, Tim, it's great to be here, and I just love your setup and the way that you launch each episode.
That's awfully kind of you. Now, Susan, this is all about you. So, if you can tell me where you were born, not necessarily when you were born, because you're a lady. If you could describe to me what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education that you received. So, the platform's yours.
So, I was born in a small town in central Pennsylvania, and it was idyllic. There was a river that ran through the town and mountains that surrounded the valley. And it was an idyllic setting to grow up in, but I couldn't wait to escape it. I was the middle of five children. And my dad's a genius astrophysicist. He taught physics and computer science at the local university. And my mother was equally genius, but she was saddled with five children before the age of 30. And she found herself soothing through food, compulsively overeating. And back then, diet pills were prescribed for that. And I realized later that that was straight speed. And my father was far away from the subjects he loved, history and music. He was guarded into a tech track, and he sued through alcohol. The whiskey bottle would uncork at 7:30 a.m. and you'd hear glug 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 glug. So let's just say it was not a hotbed of mental health within that family system. And we followed the rules: don't talk, don't tell, and don't feel. And I was highly intuitive and quite empathic, almost telepathic. I could read thoughts, I could read emotions, I could read a room. And that kept me safe in that home growing up because there was abuse of every kind slathered in every nook and every cranny. And I would dream on my beanbag in my basement on my belly, watching Barbara Walters, who was a famous newscaster and then interviewer on television. I wanted to go to New York City as soon as I could, and I wanted to be like Barbara Walters.
Wow, that's that sounds like a pretty rough upbringing.
I didn't know it, Tim, at the time. I mean, I knew that I wasn't safe. I knew something felt very unjust and awry, but I didn't know the depth until my early 20s when issues similar to what I saw demonstrated in my home started to surface in my own life. And I was very focused and determined after having the experience I did to make it.
Mm.
And I was falling short on goals, and my friends were becoming more fair weather. And I had to look at my own drinking and addiction pretty early on.
Well, let's take you back then. Let's start off by looking at your kindergarten days. So, could you remember much about those? I guess this is
I was a rebel.
before it started all kicking off.
I was a rebel. It had already started. I mean, I was 18 months old when I have my first memory of some pretty nasty neglect. And when my mother was able to finally come to me, it wasn't with soothing and love. So it was very early on that I sensed the abuse and sensed the lack of safety and intuited it. And in kindergarten, they tried to make me write with my right hand. I was writing with my left hand. And back then, they wanted you to write with your right hand. And I just thought it was silly. I didn't see the purpose or the point in that at all. So, yeah, I was a bit of a rebel.
So, are you still left-handed to this day? Did you get
I
through
am
it?
left-handed. Yeah. I write with my left hand. I do most everything else with my right, but I wasn't giving up writing with my left hand.
So, just looking at your siblings. So you're the middle of five. Did your older brother or sister, did they look out for you, or were they in the same boat? Been through it already?
Well, I have to say that each of my siblings have a very different experience of growing up in that family system. My brother, my oldest brother, there's abuse between us, and his childhood is almost completely blacked out. He was living in amnesia, I believe, from the trauma. My sister feels she had a very idyllic childhood, and she almost feels guilty for that experience. So it's very different the way that each of us lived within that dynamic. And I find it extraordinary.
So it was from that point of view, you each of you had different experiences. So moving along then, so after to kindergarten, what about your elementary school? What was that like? Was it a big school? Was it a small school? Were there lots of kids in your class? Did you have to get the big yellow bus to school? Or tell us a bit about that.
I I was right on that borderline for that bus, and it was easier for me to walk. And it was probably maybe even close to 2 miles to get to kindergarten, but I would walk. And sometimes I would walk alone. And as a parent now myself, I don't know how you send a little one, but I guess back then it was a little different. So I would walk most days to school and to kindergarten, certainly through first, second, third. I'd watch parents waiting, outside in the afternoon to pick up their children. And I always wished my parent would be out there waiting, but, they weren't. They couldn't be. They did the best they could. I mean, I want to be clear. It was hurt and damaged children raising hurt and damaged children. My parents had been abused in their own family systems, and it goes way back within the ancestry. And I think I carry some of that within the cells of my being. But elementary school, I didn't understand the process. At first grade, I wanted to color Abe Lincoln's face with an orange crayon, not a brown crayon. It seemed more closer to the skin tone for me, but that wasn't what was suggested. And Jeffrey Bradford, a little boy that sat next to me, tattled, Susie's not doing what you told us to, teacher. So I got a reprimand, and I was a big pouter. I didn't like being reprimanded, but you couldn't take that out of me, that sense of my self identity at that point. And I always had to have the attention of a boy. It started in second grade and Billy Fritz. And that was a very difficult addiction ultimately. Later in life, it would lead me to select from the lowest hanging of fruit and support that fruit. So that started early. I felt like an outsider. I would miss school a lot. I had rheumatic fever. I had strep throat. I had some pretty serious illnesses off and on. And then I was dancing. I was dancing since I was 3, and I would miss almost every Friday because we would go touring the schools to do dance demonstrations. So I always felt a little special too because I was excused from classes.
Ah, it's just to go dancing. Brilliant.
Yeah, to demonstrate it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
others, for other schools. And that was at the high school level too. So it was really exciting to be amongst older students.
So did that go right through your schooling then? The dance.
Yeah, it pretty much did. Yeah, all the way through my senior year, I was still dancing, and I actually went to college and studied dancing ultimately because I didn't know what else to do. My father was a professor, but I didn't understand what you could go to college for, really, and I just honestly wanted to skip it. I thought, why do I have to dot that I and cross that T. I just want to go to New York City. But I felt
Mm.
intuitively that it would hold me back if I didn't.
Mm. So back to your elementary school then. Um, what sort of class size were you in? Was it a big class of 30 kids or was it a smaller class? What was that like?
Yeah, it depended. There were 26 to 32 kids when I went to school there. And it was a big gathering school. It was a feeder school. There were lots of towns that
Mm.
fed into, because I lived in a very rural area. I think my town had, maybe 2,500 people in it. But our school was one of the standouts within the region. So the teachers, yeah, sometimes you get a sourpuss, but and some were better than others, but they seemed to want to be there. Most of them,
Mm.
they seemed to want to teach and have a love for it.
So what was your favourite subject in elementary?
It was probably social studies and then English, but I hated math, and that didn't help with my dad as an astrophysicist. Hated that.
And moving on then, you're going up to your middle school. So was that in the same school premises or was it a totally different school? Did you have to get the big yellow bus to it or how was that?
Somehow I managed to stay off that bus, Tim, my whole school year career. But my back then, my middle school was part of the high school. It went from grade 7 through grade 12. So we all went together, and it was terrifying to be there. But I had an older sister and an older brother within the same facility. And really, I just wanted to be popular. I wanted to fit in. I was, a cheerleader. I played field hockey the year I broke my ankle and couldn't try out for cheerleading. And, I wanted to blend. But by junior year of high school, it felt like Groundhog Day. It just felt
Mm.
a repeat of the same thing, that I was learning the same things I had learned in fifth and seventh grade. Why was I here? It was boring, and it felt rote. And it felt like we were being encouraged to memorize things and not really learn, with the exception of English. We had an amazing English department, and
Mm.
we read, Beowulf and, some of the classics. And so they really prepared us to go on to college as far as it came to literature.
Mm.
And math and science, yeah, I just kind of tucked that back into the corner and did what was necessary.
So, so, so what was the other stuff that you did? Were you into the arts or into the sciences? What were you doing? Obviously, dance was part of what you were doing.
Yeah,
So,
I was still dancing, and our family was very competitive. If there was a sport, we were going to play it as a family together. But there was a lot of chaos happening in my home, and I would deal with it through control. So I wouldn't eat breakfast. I wouldn't eat lunch. This is in, later in high school. I wouldn't eat lunch with the other students. And then I'd be ravenous when I got home from school and just tear into the cabinets and compulsively overeat, and then go to dance class for a couple hours at night to burn it all off. So there were some really dysfunctional patterns of behavior that I
mm.
began to mimic early. And I was afraid my classmates would see through the ruse. Very afraid.
Did they?
Well, apparently not, Tim, because when my book came out, which is a memoir, and I dislike social media. I'm not very comfortable with social media, have never been, but I did an interview and the host tagged me on Facebook. So I thanked her back, but I didn't understand that was going to post the interview to my page. So my high school friends, my college boyfriend, they were like, we had no idea what was going on with you. And we feel so badly, and we would have supported you had we known. But I wouldn't have wanted anybody to know. And I also thought maybe this is normal, some of it at least.
Yeah, I think when you're living in that type of environment where it's abusive, it just and you don't know any different, you think that's normal, and it's not until you kind of come out of it that you see that it is is abnormal. So going through, did you do any music? Were you musical? Did you in a choir or
So
band?
I yeah, I played piano, I played flute, I sang. I had a really strong voice, but I wouldn't say it was the most beautiful. And I was in all the class plays. I was the lead in the class play. I really loved acting, but I knew that I didn't want to be in front of the cameras or on stage as an adult. What I really wanted to do was the business side of the arts and be behind the scenes.
Uh-huh. So, what was your favourite part? What was your favourite play?
Um I didn't really like either of the plays that I was in. I was in Cheaper by the Dozen and played, the mom, and I was in, I don't know, Send Me No Flowers. It was kind of like, a Jack Lemony type of play, and it was pretty melodramatic. So, yeah, I didn't like either of them, and I didn't get cast in the musical, and I was jealous because one of my best friends, who was a year younger, her mom had paid the choral teacher to train her to
Uh,
sing. So of course he's going to showcase his protege. And I thought that was genius of her mother, but I was so jealous. And then when I had my own son, I played that out. I got him every lesson, giving him every opportunity. But of course, he wasn't really interested in that.
so, um, graduation. Did you go to prom?
I went to prom and I checked off the box. I had gone early as a sophomore. I was dating a boy from a different school, and he was a year ahead of me. So I went to his prom, and then I went the next year, and I didn't go to my senior prom. By then I was like, this is BS and malarkey. I don't want to spend the money on a dress. I don't want to go. I don't want to be around those people. This is just silly. So I was glad that was over with. I was afraid of the parties. I was always a little afraid of drinking and drugs. They showed us a film when I was in fifth grade. Art Linkletter, who was, a comedian and a host, an iconic television host, had lost his daughter. She had a bad acid trip and jumped out of a multi-story building to her death. So he put in a lot of money to do films to dissuade others, and they showed that to me in fifth grade. And I've always had a terror around any kind of pill taking or drug taking. I mean, I guess it did well for me. And I was also afraid of liquor because I knew the issues it had caused within my family and within our history. But by the end of senior year, when all those parties were happening, I did go to one, and I found it, intriguing that that burn of that liquor would take the emotional pain and numb it. So I remembered that, but I couldn't wait to get out of my little town. I felt like I was holding a number for quite a few years. But as it started to approach, I got scared because of what was I going to? I was going to be going to the shore to work at the shore and stay with my sister and a few of her college friends. But some of my classmates were staying behind and marrying their high school sweethearts. And for a moment, that looked like better than what I was going to be planning on doing, which was get to New York City as soon as I could. But that was also scary. But I knew I had to. I knew that intuitive sense in me has been very strong. There have been times that I've kicked it to the curb, but I knew I had to get out. and I knew I had to get out quickly. So we graduated on a Friday night, and at 7:45 the next morning, my car was packed and I was off. And I
Wow.
rarely went back.
So, car packed up, 7:45 in the morning, put it into gear, away you went. Where'd you go?
Wildwood, New Jersey. It
Oh, don't
is,
go to New Jersey. Is that one, is it?
yeah.
Don't go to New Jersey. But you ended up in New Jersey. What's that all about?
Yeah, it was the beach. It was great to be in nature and to be in the sand and the sun. It was healing. I was finally out of the house, but I didn't have any semblance of self. I had no real tools for self-realization. I was a chameleon. I would change into what I projected you wanted of me. And that's when I was first introduced to bars. I was 17 and I had my first Tootsie Roll, I think they called it. It was a drink with some kind of liqueur in it. And honestly, I would have rather had the real candy, but I got those drinks down and I started to have blackouts, and but I realized the merit of feeling like I finally fit in with liquor in my being. And then from the shore, I was to go to school for some prelude to the freshman year, and I had a scholarship. And I wrote to them and said, "Oh, I can't make it. I'm in New Jersey. You're in Ohio. I can't do 2 trips." And they wrote back saying, "If you want to come to school on your scholarship, you'll find a way to get here." So I, I really did not want to go to college, but off I went. And then freshman year was horrible. I just longed for that little town I grew up in and my family, even after I had spent so long plotting to get out. I was so homesick and I really couldn't understand it. Um, but I got through that year and went back to the shore the following year in New Jersey and wrote to a woman who had passed through um, at school saying I wanted to intern for her. She was an alumni and she had an arts management firm in New York City. And she said, "It's great you want to intern next summer. We need you this winter. We have our first Broadway season." So I went to the head of my department, and internships then, you didn't do that. You were supposed to stay in your trowel and do not deviate. Now it's highly encouraged. It's almost like a requirement to do an internship to graduate. But back then, that was a faux pas. And I had to sell why I wanted this internship. And then I had to go to the head of the fine art department, who didn't have any idea why I was there. He was looking at me through horn rimmed spectacles, just not understanding. And I could intuit this completely. His daughter was Maya Lin, and she had just won the award to create the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C. And he said, her dad, the dean, said, "This sounds like an okay plan. I think you should go ahead and do your internship." So I put a plan into place and it still exists today. I created more business courses into my performance plan and created an arts management major, not knowing what I was doing. And I was 19, living in Greenwich Village on my own, doing this
Wow.
this internship in the big city.
So, on the internship, did they sort of fund your accommodation and that sort of thing, and give you a few bob to feed yourself with? How did that work out?
Well, I ate a lot of greasy pizza on paper plates, and lived on $80 a week. And I was happy to be paid that at the time. And I was house sitting the first 6 weeks for one of the partners who was out on the road with one of the performance artists. And I loved the experience. I went back and worked again. They wanted me to come work with them when I graduated from college, but I really wanted something more glitzy. I didn't want to work downtown Manhattan with all these performance artists, even though, it was Paul Zaloom and you'd see Spalding Gray walking the streets and Eric Bogosian. But, I wanted to work above 14th Street. So um, before I graduated, I just asked everyone who knew anybody, did they know someone in the entertainment industry I could speak with? And found my way to ICM, which is a large global talent agency. And I was assisting two sales agents right after college in the classical division and typing the rabbinical thesis of Isaac Stern's daughter in their Upper West Side compound. And helping Yo-Yo Ma, the classical cellist, with travel plans. And I liked the classical world, but I really wanted to get into mainstream television and movies. So I
Mm.
heard a rumor through the mailroom, um, that all these Ivy League graduates in the mailroom forever, they came from Vassar and Harvard and Yale, and were like delivering agents' mail to try to get in the door while I was working on a desk. And the head of the celebrity commercial division needed an assistant. So I snuck away, did an interview with him, and came back down to my desk to see all my belongings parked into a brown paper box on my desk. And my boss called me in. I had moved up and was assisting now the VP of the company, and she called me in and she said, "I hope you got the job because you're fired."
That's outrageous.
It's New York. And so I said, "Thank you for the opportunity," and collected my belongings, and then found out a few hours later I had gotten the job. And so that following week, I was working for the head of the commercial division, and he soon thereafter left and formed his own agency and invited me to go with him. And I decided to go because I wasn't really going to learn anything on a desk as an assistant because everything happened behind closed
Mm.
doors. And so I did work with him in a studio apartment, learned how to negotiate overscale talent contracts, matching celebrities to brands. And I wasn't making enough money. And I was training people on the side doing exercise. And Barbara Walters became my client.
Wow. So just take you back just a fraction. So you actually um, graduated college.
I did graduate college. I graduated with honors, but I couldn't wait to get out of there. I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. I
All
just thought
right.
it was really silly. I needed to get to New York as soon as possible.
Because you'd already been working in New York anyway, an internship. So, and then you got a proper job out of it. So that was a bit of a result.
Yeah. Yeah, and once you have the experience and not the theory, at least for me, I just thought it was silly even to be in school, but I just wanted to tick that box.
Yeah. And I guess some some companies need that bit of paper rather than look
They
at what
do.
experience you've got. They want to see what bit of paper you've got.
They do. Yeah, and some paper is better than other paper, but ultimately, I'm not so sure that matters if you have focus and vision and
Mm.
determination, which I had back then in spades.
So moving along then. So what was the? I mean, how long did you stay at that job up when you moved with this guy setting up his own business?
It was in within months of him leaving that I joined him, and it was a great experience until it wasn't. He had a sexual addiction, and he would invite young women in for their moment,
Mm.
um, with the casting couch and have me leave. It was very awkward. And one day I rang Barbara Walters' door at 7 a.m. for our session, and she looked at me and she said, "Susan, get in here. What's going on with you?" And she got it out of me within moments. He had tried what he did with these actresses on me the day before, and it kicked up so much complex post traumatic stress. And she said, "I'm coming to work with you this morning and we'll confront this gentleman together." And I said, "Thank you, Barbara. That's so kind, but I'll do it." So I confronted him that day and he promptly fired me. I was newly sober. I wasn't even 90 days sober. I had just extricated myself from an abusive relationship where the gentleman held the purse strings, I'm embarrassed to say. Barbara offered me an assistantship, which I turned down because after that experience, I couldn't serve
Mm.
anyone. I couldn't be an assistant. And I decided to launch my own talent brokerage firm, matching celebrities to brands. I was terrified. I was 25. And Donnie Deutsch, who's a bit of an icon and entrepreneur now, back then was running his dad's ad agency and somehow got hold of me and said, "Can you give me Andy Warhol for the Pontiac dealers? We want to do a television commercial." And I'm like, "I don't know. I'll try." I couldn't get anybody, Tim, to answer the door or the phone, excuse me, at the factory. So I took the subway down there and I knocked on his brownstone door, which was in Murray Hill. And Andy's business manager, Fred, came to the door, answered, asked why I was there. I explained. He said, "Come back tomorrow at this time and I'll let you talk to Andy." So I thought, okay. So I showed up, weak at the knees, sweating bullets, but after waiting, the double doors to Andy's studio flew open. It was dark in there, and I was really scared to go in to this darkened room. And there was a pin spotlight in the center of the room coming down on this platinum hair going 17 different directions. And there he was, like scribbling away. And three pugs, those dogs with the smushed
Yeah.
up faces, they
One
were
that chase
running
parked
around the
cars.
studio. Yeah. They were running around the studio. That's all he cared about. They'd tug on his pants leg. He'd lift them up like they were babies. I was yammering on about this commercial. He wasn't even giving me eye contact. I didn't know what to do. And finally, he stopped. He looked at me for the first time in my eyes directly. And he said, "Now, really, why should I do this?" And I just paused because I wasn't sure. And then I said, "Because you can have the pugs in the shot with you." And he said, "Okay, I'll do it." And that was the deal that really launched me. And I became known for matching celebrities to brands. And I pulled off some pretty crazy matchings. And eventually, Roger Ailes got wind of me. I went over to CNBC and another network he was running called America's Talking. And the head of promotion said, Roger wants celebrities on this network. And they hired me, and celebrities weren't flocking. So I was inspired to grab a cameraman one night and go to a red carpet event. And I shoved the microphone in everybody's face that was a celebrity that walked that carpet, interviewed them about the cause, and then had them look direct to camera and say they were watching Rogers Network. And this was before those promos were done. And we aired them and they ran all over the network, and it really weighted Rogers' brand. So one day I hear, "Gold, get in here." And it was my boss in promotions from the corner office yelling. And I was like, "Oh no, what did I do this time?" And he goes, "Mr. Ailes needs to see you up in his office right away." So I go up to Mr. Ailes' office and I'm ushered in by his assistant, and the door closes and I'm sweating. I'm like, "Oh no. And he starts giving me accolades for this campaign I've created. He asked me a lot of other funny questions about my family and my engagement with them that didn't really seem to fit. But ultimately, he said, "Name the show you want to produce." And that's how I became a television producer, even though I didn't know what a producer was.
How did that work out?
It was really fun because I was really creative and I had never been in that box, Tim. I really didn't understand working within a corporate system. And I was given a lot of free reign to be creative and I took it. Um, and I took a lot of chances. I was the one in the meetings that would just speak up and ask the stupid questions. And people would just you could feel them go, "Oh no,"
There's
but
no
it got
stupid question. No,
yeah,
nobody asks
well,
stupid questions. They might get some stupid answers, but they don't ask stupid questions.
yeah. Ultimately, that network where I was producing went down, but Roger invited me to help launch Fox News Channel, and then it was shortly after that that I got an invitation to go to Los Angeles to help run a talk television show. And it was a great career move. And I thought it was a great career move, and it was, but it was really to meet the man who would become my greatest guru and teacher. And ultimately, that was the man who would become my ex husband.
Not the current one then.
Yeah.
So it was obviously good to start with, and then it sort of went sour, did it?
Yeah, I really thought I met the man of my dreams, and I was pretty accomplished by that time. I had, cracked a lot of deals. I was producing in television. I had a movie set up at Universal with a major comedian, and I met and married this man that I thought was my dream partner, and it was a ruse. The mask started to fall once I bought a home for our family, and we had a son, and my life started to get smaller and the pressure started to get greater, and he just wasn't able to step up to the plate. So I tried to make him fiscally responsible to bring some integrity to the relationship. And we got to the last bone of contention. And he said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing for divorce after I thought we were going to save our marriage. And that's when that intuitive voice came over my right shoulder and through my heart. And it said, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself. And I call him my greatest guru because this was like a perfect storm. All it took to survive my household, to survive my career as basically an entrepreneur and consultant in the entertainment industry, to recover from addiction and to thrive, to face clinical depression with a 10-year bout of that and learn how to work with it. And now here I was with narcissistic abuse to face. And it felt like this is the lesson of the lifetime if you're strong enough to stand up to it. And he held court in the master bedroom while I, by choice, took a mattress into a partial conversion in our garage. And I made that my monastery. And I went deep into my body to clear the trauma pockets that I was still holding on to and the codependency, because I believed I was not safe without a man, specifically at the time, this man. And I really had to face that. And I held no contact, no verbal contact, and no eye contact within that domicile until I could write him the 6-figure check and he could move on to his next source of supply. And he was my greatest guru, Tim, because he authentically taught me my power and my grace and authentic love from the inside out. It had always come from the outside in. I was always achieving from the outside in, career, endurance sport, where I succeeded highly, the relationship, the movie deal or the TV deal. And this was the first time that I could authentically say, yeah, no, it comes from little Susie inside my heart, this beautiful being that's walked through all of this. And I was able to really shift when I felt the injustice and the impropriety and what seemed unfair. I could shift and see this as my greatest gift, an authentic lesson to connect with that self-love. And that's transformed my life. And that's what I'm helping others to discover now.
Are you still in the television business, still producing stuff, or have you changed direction altogether?
So I shifted. Reality TV got so painful, it just wasn't my bag. And
Oh no,
yeah,
not reality TV. I can't bear it. It's just so cringeworthy, and I know exactly what you're saying there.
yeah, try producing it.
Doesn't bear thinking about.
So I shifted into doing PR from a biz dev. and media outreach perspective, and it was quite fulfilling. And I liked the work, and I could be at home to raise my son as a single parent, and it really has served me well. So, yeah.
So what are you actually doing nowadays then? What's
The book is out, and I'm building a platform around it of free resources and materials to help people walk through traumas similar to what I've experienced, and to clear the toxicity that is lingering in our family lines, in our ancestry, that we carry with us, that may be impacting us in a way that does not serve. So that's where my focus and my heart is going. And my career has been really glittery, and most of it has been fun and exciting and a privilege. But I feel finally, through the book, this is my purpose and my mission. And like you, leaving a legacy behind with all your guest stories, this is my legacy. To share my experience authentically, how I navigated it, and to leave the tools behind in the appendix for other people to use that have served me so well and that I've learned, and to really help others know that there's a pathway to freedom if we can just let go of the truth.
so where can people get your book?
Oh, all the regular places, but Amazon's probably the easiest, right?
And is it available as an audible?
Not yet, but that is coming. That is in play.
Aha. And who is going to read it?
Well, I think people are going to be drawn to that book that feel,
No, who's going to read the audible?
oh, who's going to be? Oh, you're so funny. I didn't get the joke. That flew right over my head, Tim. You're a bad boy.
I know. So you're going to read it yourself, or you're going to get an actor in to do it?
So I've been told, maybe it didn't come across on this podcast, but my voice is an activation, and people always say there's something about my voice, and this is my personal experience. I mean, I love my family. It wasn't easy to write a book that was ultimately titled Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom, but I feel like since it is my story, I will tell it in my own
Wow,
voice.
brilliant. And you're going to go into a professional studio to get the real deep quality in the audio for it.
Yes, and that's why I'm taking my time with it. It'd be easy just to record it even on Zoom or, some platform. But no, I want to do it the right way, especially having come from, the background that I have. I think I cheat myself. So yeah, that'll be the next step.
Brilliant. I love audible books. I love I love that to listen to, and podcasts and all the rest of it. But books, audio books, are the way forward, especially with somebody with dyslexia.
Oh, details.
Well, Susan, what a fascinating life you've led.
So far, knock wood, but it'll still continue a bit, I feel. I still have purpose and reason to be here. And it's been a privilege and a pleasure. And what a gift, Tim, to share it with you and with your listeners. And I'm pleased to be amongst your horde of storytellers. I mean, it's prolific, the amount of storytelling you've been capable of producing so beautifully for the benefit of us all. So thank you.
No, thank you. I have one more question.
Okay.
Out of all the celebrities that you've ever met and worked with, who has been the favourite? Who has
George
come across
Clooney.
as George Clooney's come across as genuine and all the rest of it, funny.
He always put you at ease. He would remember you, your face, your name when he'd see you for the second, third, or fourth time. He was Well, I'm talking like he's dead. He's not. He's a charmer, and he's an authentic human being. Taking one step at a time, like most of them all are. They're just doing it in public.
Yeah. So what you see is what you get with him. He's one of those types, is he?
That's been my experience. Yeah.
Fantastic. Susan, thank you so much for your the conversation today. I've really enjoyed it.
It was really delicious. Thanks for having me, Tim.
You're most welcome. Wow, what a story. And what coming through some of the trauma that she's had. Amazing. So, until the next one, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.